Psychologists say narcissists use psychological tricks that slowly control the people around them. And the scariest part? Most victims never realize it's happening. In this video, we'll reveal 7 manipulation tactics narcissists use to control people psychologically. Some of the most powerful manipulation tactics are completely invisible. They don't look like manipulation. They don't feel like manipulation. And that's exactly why they work. Psychologists say that highly manipulative people, especially narcissists, often use subtle psychological tricks to control the people around them. These tactics slowly influence your emotions, your decisions, and even your perception of reality. And the scariest part? Most people never realize it's happening until the damage is already done. Because manipulation rarely starts aggressively. It usually begins with small psychological shifts. A comment that makes you doubt yourself. A silence that creates emotional pressure. A compliment that slowly builds dependence. Over time, these subtle behaviors create a powerful psychological effect. You start questioning your own judgment. You start prioritizing someone else's emotions over your own. And slowly, control over your thoughts begins to shift. In this video, we will explore 7 psychological manipulation tactics that experts say are commonly used by narcissistic personalities. Understanding these behaviors can completely change how you see certain interactions in your life. Because once you recognize manipulation, it becomes much harder for someone to control you. Let's begin with one of the most famous and dangerous tactics, gaslighting. The first manipulation tactic is called gaslighting. Gaslighting is a psychological strategy where someone makes you question your own memory, perception, or even your sanity. Imagine clearly remembering something that happened during a conversation. But when you mention it later, the other person denies it completely. They say it never happened. They claim you misunderstood. They suggest that you are overreacting. At first, this may seem like a simple disagreement, but when it happens repeatedly, something dangerous begins to happen. You start doubting your own perception of reality. You may start thinking things like, maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong. Over time, the manipulator slowly replaces your confidence with uncertainty. And once someone begins to doubt their own judgment, they become much easier to control. The second tactic is called love bombing. Love bombing usually appears at the very beginning of a relationship. The manipulator overwhelms their target with attention, compliments, and affection. Everything feels intense and exciting. You might hear things like, "You're the most amazing person I've ever met." "I've never felt this way about anyone before." It can feel like a perfect connection. But in many cases, this stage is not genuine love. It's psychological conditioning. Because when someone feels emotionally special and valued, they quickly become attached. And once emotional attachment is created, manipulation becomes far more effective. The third manipulation tactic is the silent treatment. Silence may seem harmless, but psychologically, it can be extremely powerful. Human beings are naturally sensitive to social rejection. When someone suddenly stops communicating, the brain interprets it as a threat to the relationship. This creates anxiety and emotional discomfort. You may start wondering, did I do something wrong? Why are they ignoring me? The longer the silence continues, the stronger this emotional pressure becomes. Eventually, many people will try to restore communication at any cost. They may apologize, even when they did nothing wrong. This is exactly why manipulators use silence, because silence creates pressure without confrontation. The fourth tactic is called projection. Projection happens when someone accuses others of the very behaviors they are guilty of themselves. For example, a manipulative person may accuse their partner of being dishonest. But in reality, they are the one hiding information. This tactic creates confusion and distraction. Instead of questioning the manipulator's behavior, attention shifts toward defending yourself. Projection is extremely effective because it reverses the roles in the conflict. The manipulator becomes the accuser, and the victim becomes the one trying to prove their innocence. The fifth manipulation tactic is guilt tripping. This technique targets one of the strongest emotional triggers humans experience: guilt. Manipulators may say things like, "If you really cared about me, you would do this." Or, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me?" These statements create emotional pressure. They frame the situation in a way that makes you feel responsible for someone else's feelings. Over time, this dynamic can become extremely unhealthy because you begin prioritizing the manipulator's emotions above your own well-being. The sixth tactic is called triangulation. Triangulation involves bringing a third person into the relationship dynamic. This can create jealousy, insecurity, or competition. For example, a manipulator might constantly mention another person who admires them, or they might compare you to someone else. Statements like, "Other people appreciate me more," or "Someone else would understand me better." These comments create a subtle psychological message. You begin feeling like you need to compete for their approval, and that gives the manipulator even more control. The final manipulation tactic is playing the victim. This is one of the most powerful emotional strategies manipulators use. Instead of appearing aggressive, they present themselves as misunderstood or unfairly treated. They tell stories about how people have wronged them. They describe themselves as someone who is constantly hurt by others. This triggers empathy in the people around them, and empathy lowers psychological defenses, because when someone appears vulnerable, we naturally want to protect them. But manipulators often use this empathy as a shield. It prevents others from questioning their behavior. Understanding these manipulation tactics does not mean becoming suspicious of everyone, but it does mean becoming aware of patterns that can harm your emotional well-being, because manipulation only works when it remains invisible. Once you recognize the tactics, they lose much of their power, and that awareness gives you something extremely valuable: the ability to protect your own mind.